Welcome to Theme Deck Tuesday. This is where I take a theme deck and review it in the Pokemon TCG, and in this video we're going to be having a look at Sky Guardian. This is quite an old one, so as I've done previously, I'm going to be taking it into the Trainer Challenge at the end of the video, so if you want to skip ahead to that, then be sure to check out the timestamps in the description, but otherwise we're going to be trying to struggle along against the ladder opponents in the first couple of matches in this after the review. So if you're not already subscribed, be sure to subscribe down below. I do post multiple times a week. Let's get into the deck profile. Taking a brief look at the deck list for Sky Guardian, the box art Pokemon here that you get as a holo is indeed the Lugia. You get two of these, a holo and non-holo version. The main selling point of this card is the ability here, Pressure, reduces all damage done to it by 20, which is very nice as you can typically survive quite a few low damage attacks by using the Pokemon's ability here. We do also have an attack in Intensifying Burn, deals 60 damage and an additional 60 if the defending Pokemon is a Pokemon EX, which clearly isn't going to be relevant because there are no Pokemon EX in the theme deck format, so just a base of 60 damage for 3 energy is pretty poor, but that ability certainly can make up for it, and of course it is a colorless Pokemon, so you can easily set it up. Now we do have way too many Pokemon. As you can see in this deck, we have a total of 30 Pokemon, so half of the deck is Pokemon, which really hurts your draws overall, as you're have very little consistency and a lot of uncertainty with the Pokemon that you're actually going to be drawing into, but you do have some good attackers overall. The key ones that you're going to be wanting to focus on is the Delphox. So it's a stage 2 Pokemon. If you want to try and get a stage 2 set up, this is the one to get set up, because its second attack here, Psystorm, for 3 colorless, deals 20 damage for all energy that's in play, both yours and your opponent's. So obviously theme deck format, you're going to be attaching energy every single turn, and this is going to be stacking up to amount to a lot of damage at the end of the game at least. So definitely a good finisher if you want to save it for that, but Flickering Flames can be a nice attack as well. For the big basics that we have to work with, we do have Kangaskhan, a little bit of a slow burner here, as it is 4 energies for 100 damage. Not the best overall, but can be pretty good since it is another Pokemon with 120 HP. And then we do also have the Snorlax here. Snorlax always has a high HP, 140 in this case, and for 3 energy you can use Toss and Turn, 30 damage plus an additional amount of damage. This attack can be used even if this Pokemon is asleep, and if it is, then this attack does 90 more, which is going to be a total of 120. There are a few effects in a theme deck format which could potentially put this Pokemon to sleep, so you can take advantage of that and attack through it. And then the second attack, Swallow, you can heal from this Pokemon the amount of damage that you did to your opponent's active, which is going to be 50. So dealing 50 and healing 50, pretty good overall. It does just take a while to actually get set up, as you don't have any way of accelerating energy. The only pseudo accelerator I would say in this deck is the Whimsicott. You deal 40 damage and then you get to move an energy, so even if you're about to get knocked out, you can deal your 40 and then keep your energy in play at the very least. Not the best overall, but we do have a lot of Pokemon to work with, so those are the key ones that you're going to be wanting to focus on. And as you can see here, we don't have a lot of trainer cards, but the ones that we do have are actually quite powerful. For example, the Ultra Ball, one of the best ball search cards in the game. You can search out any Pokemon. You do have to discard 2 cards, but you're just going to be getting rid of a Pokemon or energy that you don't need. And then also Fairy Drop, again allows you to heal, so if you're powering up Snorlax and healing a bunch, you can use this to heal even more damage, as a heal of 50 is very good. And then the trainer cards or supporter cards are also strong, as we have Wally to search out our evolutions, which is very powerful as they come straight out of the deck and you can get them out a turn early, in addition to things like Pokemon Fan Club, so you can search out your basic Pokemon. So a good selection overall, but just the fact that we have 30 Pokemon is really going to hinder this deck, and it's a typical theme that we have seen across all of these older theme decks. So we'll get into a couple of games here, as well as go against the trainer challenge as I mentioned. So hopefully you enjoy it. If you do, give a like down below, and let's get into these matches. Starting off our first game here, we're up against the awesome Necrozma and Malamar deck. Definitely going to be a tough one because they have a lot of different options in order to draw cards here, and we just really do not have any of those options at all. But we can start it off at least with a Professor's Letter that's going to grab us out 2 energy from the deck, and we can then thin out some of these cards with a good old Ultra Ball. Best searching card I would say for Pokemon, since you can get any Pokemon that you need out of the deck. I think we are going to be losing a Shauna here though, or an energy. I think going to be potentially just an energy since we do have so much of it. Kind of makes sense just to go with that for now, and we can at least get ourselves a Pokemon out of the deck. We do already have the Breaks in hand, so I am tempted to get the Fennekin and try and get the Delphox into play. We do have the Delphox available at least, so let's go ahead and try and get that big massive Pokemon out. That's going to be our primary attacker here, I would say, and we can start attaching energy onto it as well before passing over to my opponent. Now we do also have a Wally in our hand, so if we really want to, we can go ahead and evolve into this Breaks in on the following turn, and then use the Wally as well, which is going to get us straight into that Delphox just in one turn, completely skipping the whole, only evolving once per turn. That goes straight out the window with Wally. Super powerful card. As you can see here, if you're not familiar, you can search your deck for an evolution Pokemon and put it onto one of your Pokemon, and you don't have to wait on the evolution reel. You can do it straight when it comes into play, or when just whenever you need it, really. I guess is what I'm trying to get at here. Super powerful card. I mean, it was so powerful in fact that they did in fact ban Wally, and they did actually unban Wally this year, I believe it was. So that just kind of shows you the power that Wally has, and we can use it right here, as I mentioned, getting that Breaks and Evolution down. We play the Wally, and then we can get the Delphox down as well right here. So awesome to see. We do also get the Snorlax, which is pretty nice, and we can pass over to my opponent here, so we're set up for this following turn to use a Shauna. That's going to get us going, but really we do need to find some energy here, since we did miss out on the energy attachment that last turn. I suppose we could have held on to one of the energies in our hand, but really I wanted to keep a hold of the Shaunas, since we do have so few supporter cards in our deck, especially supporter cards that are actually going to draw us more cards. So it would definitely make more sense to hold on to Shauna rather than the energies, since we do have a substantial amount being, the third of our deck being energy cards. So definitely keep the Shaunas around. My opponent does attach 2 energies onto this Audino here, so they're going to be hitting us for 30 damage. Definitely want to get this Meowth out of the active spot if we can, and we are going to be needing a fire energy or a fairy energy in order to do that. We do find one, which is pretty reasonable. We also get some other Pokemon that we could work with, but I think we'll just attach for now, and we will be retreating into the Delphox. That will hold on to these Pokemon. There's not really any need to put them into play just yet, but we can attack with our Delphox here, dealing 40 damage. We do put my opponent to sleep, but of course they get ahead and wake up, because that's just my luck. We always seem to be pretty poor when it comes to coin flips in this game, unfortunately. But going over to my opponent, they have all the stuff that they need, which is essentially just energy. They do also find that special energy here, the weakness card energy for the Necrozma, that is going to buff the Necrozma's attack, allowing it to deal 160 damage. Definitely going to be enough to knock out our Delphox in one hit, which is very scary. So we're going to have to rely on finding energies here and trying to get set up best we can with some backup attackers. My opponent does also heal a bunch of damage, 30 damage here in the heal, which is going to be a bit of a problem for us in order to deal with, but we do find the energy that we can start attaching onto our bench here, which is going to be reasonable, and we're just going to be attacking once again for 40 damage, hoping that my opponent stays asleep. But of course they get the heads on the coin flip. That is going to allow them to wake up. I think we want to try and build up a nice big attack with our Pokemon here. We just have the round on Whismur, which isn't going to be dealing a huge amount, but hopefully we can find some evolutions for our Pokemon here on the bench. That would be a great help. We could always start attaching onto the Kangaskhan here as well. 100 damage is pretty good, but it does require 4 energy, which is pretty problematic in order to get that amount of energy into play. But my opponent's Audino here is really just tearing through us with that heal of 30. It's going to be making it very difficult for us to actually get anything going. We do have the Fairy Energy though, which is going to allow us to use a potion, a fairy type of potion here to heal up 50 damage, which is pretty useful, and it gets us a little bit closer in order to attack with the second attack on Delphox, which is very powerful. And we can then go in, attack my opponent once again for essentially 10 damage because they would heal it, but they do in fact stay asleep this time, which is great, as that means that we can get another attack in. They do have 60 on them, so another attack from us is going to get a knockout on this Audino. But as we can see here, my opponent is powering up that Necrozma in the back. It is ready to go and get a one hit on our Delphox if they need it. Just a case of seeing if they have a switch in their hand, so they could go for that knockout right now. Otherwise it is likely going to be a pass from my opponent, and we're going to be in a tough spot because if we take the knockout on this Audino on the following turn, my opponent is going to hit us right back with the Necrozma, and we're not going to have any kind of a comeback to deal with that Necrozma, as we have no good attackers in order to make a comeback here. My opponent does indeed pass over to us. We draw another Pokemon, which is not going to be any help. I guess we'll take the knockout here. If we don't take the knockout, my opponent's just going to end up retreating anyway once they wake up. So I guess we'll go for it. We do pick up a Fire Energy here. And here comes the Necrozma. It is going to be tearing through our Pokemon with no problems whatsoever. And we really just have a matter of, I'd say, 4 or 5 turns to try and get energies down, but even at that point my opponent will be able to build up some other attackers, so there's really no chance of us winning the game at this point. And like I said at the beginning of this match, that is going to be the power of my opponent's deck, but also just the fact that we are an older deck, and as we've seen time and time again in the Theme Deck Tuesday series, these old theme decks just do not perform well whatsoever against these more powerful and modern theme decks, which is a real shame, to be honest. We will put up our Whismur. We can do a grand total of 10 damage. I guess we'll take that since there's not a huge amount else that we can do here. We do have the Fennekin, which is not super useful, but I guess we'll start attaching energy onto our Kangaskhan, since that is something that is quite beefy, but I mean 120 is still going to be knocked out by the Necrozma here. We'll do our little 10 damage and pass over to my opponent, where they can then knock out our Whismur with no problems whatsoever. I think we could honestly just concede to this game, as I don't really see any way of us winning, but we'll see what our top deck is on this following turn and probably just concede from there, as like I said, we have no way of accelerating energy like my opponent, having the Psychic Recharge on the Malamar here, allowing them to get Psychic Energies out of the discard and onto their bench Pokemon with ease. So as we can see, they are picking up another Necrozma, which is going to allow them to have a backup attacker, definitely putting that into play. And even if they don't get the special energy for it, they are dealing a base of 100 damage, which is still going to be knocking out a majority of our benched Pokemon and Pokemon in play, which is really all they need. And they are going to be using that Psychic Recharge plus the manual attachment from their hand to attach onto that Necrozma. We see the knockout on our Whismur as expected. I guess we'll just be promoting possibly the Meowth. I mean, it doesn't really matter what we promote at this point. I guess we'll put up our Cottony here, since we do have another Cottony in hand, so we'll go for that I suppose. We'll attach another energy and pass over to my opponent. Probably just concede at the start of our next turn. I just want to see what our top deck is, but as you can see, we're mostly drawing either Pokemon or energy cards, because that is primarily what this deck consists of. And it is a real shame, because this deck probably would have been good back in the day. Playing against other old theme decks would probably serve this deck quite well if we do get into any of those matchups. Fingers crossed we do, but against these more powerful decks, that especially ones that appear in my top 10 list, then they're definitely going to struggle when we play some of these old decks. But certainly go ahead and check out the deck review that I did on my opponent's deck, as well as the top 10 theme decks video. If you haven't already, then I'll leave those in the description. We do find the tool card that's in our deck so that we can get energies back into our hand. But we're definitely not going to be able to get any way of getting a knockout here on this Necrozma, so I am just going to concede the game here. My opponent is way too far ahead, and there's no way that we're going to be able to find the energies in order to deal with that matchup. We'll just get into another game and hope that we play against an older deck. Going into this game, we're up against the Relentless Flame deck, so highly doubt we're going to be winning this one either, but we'll at least give it our best shot. We're going in high roll with the Snubble here, 2 energy and flipping a coin. Could potentially deal no damage, but we could also potentially deal 50 damage, and that is the high roll that we want to go for here. I already have terrible luck with coin flips, but hey, if we're going to go for coin flips, we've got to go for the highest of risk ones that we possibly can. So let's go ahead and try and get some knockouts with this Snubbull, and we do at least have our Tierno in our hand, which, I mean, it is going to draw us 3 cards. It is better than not drawing 3 cards, I suppose. And we see here my opponent is going to be getting set up very nicely here, as they are able to search their deck for a basic Pokemon, which goes straight onto their bench there. Very good for them in order to get everything that they need on the go. We're going to go for our Tierno. Of course we draw 2 energy, but we do at least get into another supporter card, which is quite nice. And we do have nothing else that we're left to do. Can we get a flip? No, it is going to be a Tails, which means we are not dealing any damage here. No 50 damage for us, unfortunately, and it just goes and passes over to my opponent. Very unfortunate, as my opponent does have 60 HP, so it would have been very easy to finish them off there. We have plenty of attacks which deal 10 damage in order to finish off that knockout, but looks like they are going to be evolving on the bench, so they're looking to use that attack once again. Find another Pokemon to get onto their bench there. I believe it's called Find a Friend or Call for Family on this particular one. I know that there are a couple which are called Find a Friend, but no, just Call for Family this time around. But looks like my opponent's not even going to be doing that. They're just opting to hit us for 20 damage, which is also very reasonable. And we will go for a Shauna here. Shuffle our hand into our deck. We're going to be getting less cards overall, but we do at least get to look at a bunch of other cards. We do find our Meowth, which is quite nice. Can we get a head this time around? We do. So we're going to be hitting for a big 50 damage. Very nice in order to start getting the knockouts here. Can my opponent get the Charizards set up, or at the very least get some Rapidash, which is also the big Pokemon in the Relentless Flame deck? And they do indeed. As they get the Nidoqueen down onto the board, they're going to be able to look and find a Pokemon out of their deck and put it into their hand every single turn with that Nidoqueen, as we've seen so many times in the past. Very powerful ability to be able to make use of. Now we do have our potion here once again, the Fairy Drop, going to allow us to heal off 50 damage. We do only have 40 on us, but that's alright. And I think we are just going to be going for the high roll once again, putting down some more Snubbull. And yeah, that's all we can do. We only have energies left in our hand. Can we get a head? No, it's another Tails. So we're not even going to be getting a knockout. We have only got 1 heads out of 3 attacks here so far, which is pretty poor. If we had gotten all heads, we would have been in a pretty good spot. We're dealing a significant amount of damage here. 50 at a time is nothing to scoff at on a basic Pokemon in theme format, but here we can see my opponent does get the Charizard set up, so that is going to be all they need, as they can easily just retreat here, use that Roaring Resolve ability, and then attack us, but looks like they're not going to be bothered about doing that. They're just looking to bide their time, I suppose. Now we do have a Fairy attack, which is a little unfortunate as I did attach a Fire Energy earlier, but that's alright, and it is only dealing 40 damage, but I suppose it's not too terrible, as we do get to keep the energy in play, so I will attach the Fairy Energy onto the Whimsicott, and we'll just go for another attack. We do get the head, so we finally get a knockout here. It's going to be a little difficult to really maintain that, as my opponent does have the Charizard, and as expected they are going to be promoting it into the active spot here, so they can use that Blaze Ball attack to easily get a knockout here. They don't even need any additional fire energy, as 130 damage is all they need in order to get a knockout. They do get double tails on that timer ball though, means that they're not going to be able to search their deck for any evolutions from the timer ball, but they do at least have that Nidoqueen, allowing them to get any Pokemon that they want, and it looks like they are wanting to get another Nidoqueen set up, which is why I kind of questioned it on the last turn, because they could have just started to get that evolution down and retreated in order to protect it, and then just promoted the Charizard last turn, then we wouldn't have even got a knockout, but they're going for this route. That's up to them, I guess, and we do at least have the 40 damage that Whimsicott can deal, which is better than nothing, I suppose, but it's certainly not going to be great overall. We'll promote our Whimsicott here, see what we draw. Just a Fairy Energy, not anything too great really. I guess we'll attach onto our Meowth, I suppose. Nothing else that we can really attach to, as our Whimsicott is dealing 40 damage and then moving energy, putting it onto that Snubbull, and then going over to my opponent's turn. We did at least get 40 damage onto the Charizard, so it's going to take a couple more turns before we can actually get a knockout here, as they do have 150 HP. Meowth is of course only dealing 50 damage at a time. The Snubbull, again, only dealing 50 damage if we do get a heads on it, so not going to be guaranteed there either. We'll have to see what we can come up with here. The opponent is going to be using Roaring Resolve, so that does help us because they're damaging themselves, putting them on 60 damage already, which is actually a pretty big help. It means that we only actually need to attack 2 more times to get a knockout on this Charizard, so that's pretty good for us. And we do have a couple of Meowth, although we can only attach 1 energy at a time, which is certainly not ideal. Let's go ahead and promote the Meowth that we have in play already. I guess we'll put another one down, and we'll attach a Fire Energy in order to get an attack here, dealing our 50 damage, putting my opponent up to 110 with 40 HP remaining. They can still Roaring Resolve. They will have 20 HP left after that point, which is just a little bit out of range, which is a little unfortunate as we only deal 10 damage with our Cottony here. Very unfortunate. If it had been 20 damage, then we would have been in a much better place overall, but really it's not going to matter, as my opponent does have that Nidoqueen. They were able to get that set up very early on, so they can easily search out everything that they need, and they have gone for a second Nidoqueen, so they can now search out 2 Pokemon out of their deck every turn, which is very powerful to have. And they are going to be getting that Rapidash now, which certainly makes sense, as they have the Charizards already going and getting set up in the back on the bench there. Let's see if they're going to be using the Roaring Resolve. You have to imagine that they do. They are going to be ahead in prizes, and really, as we can only attach 1 energy at a time, there's no real way that we can actually keep up with the Charizard here. Of course, they probably have the Brock's Grit in their hand. I mean, most people do at this point anyway, but I'm guessing they do have it in their hand. They can easily just recycle the Charizard here, put it back into the deck, and then search it out with the Nidoqueens which are on the bench. we will promote the Snubble, and we do get a Snorlax, which is reasonable, or not Snorlax, the Whimsicott, my apologies. Getting a little bit too excited, wishing it was a Snorlax, but only a Whimsicott, or Whimser? It's not Whimser, it's Whismer. Getting that a little bit confused, but anyway, missing the point. Distracting from the fact that we just got Tails and attacked for 0 damage, which is not good, but my opponent is a little bit stuck here as they can't actually Roaring Resolve. They are going to be forced to knock themselves out if they do Roaring Resolve, which, I mean, really isn't the worst. And yeah, if they knock themselves out, they could probably just find Brock's Grit again, but they do have the Rapidash here as well as a backup if they need it. They do already have the single fire energy on Charmeleon as well, so that could help them out, but they have the switch, so they don't even have to retreat or knock themselves out. They have to switch into a fully powered up Nidoqueen, which is going to allow them to easily get knockouts across our board. And considering we have 0 cards in our hand, I find it very unlikely that we're going to be finding a supporter card here and actually get energy. My opponent does knock themselves out anyway for whatever reason. Not quite sure why they wasted a switch when they could have just done that when they were in the active spot. And they did also attach energies to themselves, which is wasting energy. They do take a prize card, going down to 2 prize cards remaining. Like I said, there's nothing that we can really do here. We'll see what our top deck is. Just an energy card, and I suppose we could go ahead and use Round for like 10 damage. Although the first attack, Pound, also does 10 damage, so pretty pointless either way there. I guess we'll just attack for 10. Maybe we can get another energy, deal 50 with Meowth on the following turn, but ultimately we are going to be losing this game as well. I suppose we could go into the trainer challenge like what we did in the past, see how we get on there and try and get a bit more of a fair game against the AI computer, just to kind of see how this deck plays out against a more level playing ground. And yep, as I predicted, my opponent did indeed find the Brock's Grit, and they were just waiting to get the opportunity to get that Charizard back into the deck, and they can easily search it out here with the Nidoqueen, getting the Charmeleon, and of course using the other Nidoqueen to get the Charizard as well. So their entire board is going to be evolution Pokemon, which maximizes the damage on Nidoqueen, although they do have a bench space open, so not quite max damage, but it is pretty close, which is cool to see. It's always good when you can max out Nidoqueen's damage, as it can deal quite a bit. It can deal 210 damage, and that is with a bench space open as well, so very impressive the amount of damage that Nidoqueen can do. Do really like its attack as well as the ability there. Unfortunately, we did not find an energy though, and we can't even attack with our Cottony, as I mean we could, I suppose. It is a colorless energy that it requires. I was thinking of the Whimsicott, but I guess we'll go in here, we'll deal 10 damage and then go over to my opponent where they can win the game and take their last prize card, as that is just the way that these old theme decks go. I mean, I feel like I say this in every video that I look at an old theme deck, but they're just not able to compete against these actually strong and more recent decks, so a little unfortunate, but we'll get into a quick game against the AI in the trainer challenge and see if we can get a victory that way. Alrighty, we're in the trainer challenge. I picked a deck at random that's going to be somewhat fair, hopefully, and that is a lightning deck, but didn't actually realise that my opponent is going to be playing EX Pokemon, so that's going to make it a little bit more interesting, as they do give up 2 prizes when we eventually get to knock them out. And we do have a couple of Pokemon that we can work with here, which isn't too shabby. And of course we can't attack on our first turn, so we will pass over to my opponent, which did have a lot of Pokemon in their hand, so they are going to have a very few amount of cards to actually work with here. And we do have a Tierno to increase our hand size, which is nice. And we do finally get our Snorlax. Do definitely want to put that into play, as it can deal a lot of damage here. Could also start powering up the Moltres here the rest of the way, since it does require 4 energy. I feel like that's going to be a little bit of a task to really ask for that, so let's just play down the Lugia, attach 8 energy onto the Snorlax, and we'll attack our opponent for 20 damage. 20 damage for 1 energy seems pretty reasonable in this type of a format, so I'm quite content with that. And we do have a energy in our hand to at least start attaching onto the bench as well. We do find another energy. I think we'll just continue our strategy here of attaching onto our Snorlax, make that our primary attacker. We'll get down the Meowth as well. I do like playing the Meowth. It does have a fun little attack there that you can use, especially if your opponent tries to retreat or switch out, you can still attack. And my opponent has completely played out their hand. It is just full of energy from the looks of things, and of course Pokemon from the huge amount that they played down. But we do have the Shauna, so we can see some more cards here, hoping for some extra energy. We do at least find the 1, and we'll just keep attacking our opponent, finally getting the knockout here, but I'm a little bit scared of the Thunderous EX that they're about to bring up here. It does have 3 energy on it, so I'm guessing it's going to be dealing a lot of damage, and here we go, 150 damage. They deal 50 damage to themselves though, which is going to be very helpful for us, as our Snorlax does deal a lot of damage as well. So this attack can be used even if this Pokemon is asleep, but we do have to use Swallow first in order to put this Pokemon to sleep, I believe, or perhaps not, I guess. So we can't actually put our Snorlax to sleep. Could be a bit of a problem, but I guess dealing 50 damage isn't too terrible considering we have 140 HP, but my opponent does have 150 damage that they're going to be dealing. This is a bit of a tricky situation. I think we'll promote a Pokemon that we can sacrifice. It's going to be the best option overall here, and we can start attaching energy onto our Lugia. Definitely going to be helpful since Lugia does also deal extra damage, which, you know, hindsight 2020, I guess I probably should have started attaching onto the Lugia, as it does actually deal additional damage to EX Pokemon, which typically you don't play against when you're playing in the theme deck format, but in this situation that is actually going to be very relevant, so definitely should have started attaching onto there first and foremost, but my opponent is slowly knocking themselves out, so I'm quite content with the setup that we have here. We can just keep attaching onto our Lugia, perfectly fine, and we'll get that extra energy down. We'll play the Professor's Letter so that we can thin the deck a little bit, take 2 energies out here, hopefully draw into some better cards, and we will once again pass over to my opponent. We can attack with the Lugia on this following turn, but my opponent is continually just knocking themselves out, essentially, with the amount of damage that they're dealing to themselves. Really unnecessary, as they definitely could be using the first attack here, 30 damage, and then potentially doing an additional 30 and paralysis. That's definitely a lot better than dealing 50 damage to yourselves, but if that's what my opponent wants to do, then that's up to them, I guess. We'll go in with the Lugia here, since it is able to reduce damage as well. Definitely makes sense to go ahead and use this to attack, and we will get the knockout here. Like I said, taking 2 prize cards, so I don't feel too bad about going behind on prizes, since we did take 1 earlier and we're able to take 2 here on this Pokemon EX. So we're now tied up with our opponent, and we do have a substantial amount of energy and attackers in play. And like I said here, we're able to reduce damage by 20 and also deal 60 damage with our attacks here. And we do have some good options available as well. We did only sustain 20 damage, so I don't want to use the Fairy Drop just yet. We can start attaching fire energies though onto our Braixen, with the hopes of getting a Delphox into play. We'll just attack my opponent for 60 damage, not quite a knockout as Zapdos does have 120, so we will need 2 more attacks, or 2 attacks in total I should say, to get another fire. So we can attach there, and I guess we'll just go for the other attack, get the knockout on the Zapdos, and we're looking pretty good in this matchup overall. Like I said, it's good to come into the trainer challenge to play some of these older theme decks, just to have a bit of fun and see how they intentionally should have actually worked, we do find an Ultra Ball here, which I'm definitely going to be making use of, so that we can actually get a, what's it called, a Delphox out of the deck here, and oops, we'll get that. Hopefully it's actually in the deck and not prized. It is. That's excellent. Not that we're going to need it, as we do have our Snorlax all set up, but that's fine. We do have the Delphox as an option as well. Suppose we could get some evolutions down, why not? And we'll go ahead and attack my opponent for 60 damage. Not quite the knockout. Potentially could have retreated into the Delphox or the Snorlax here, but I'm not too fussed as my opponent isn't dealing any damage whatsoever, so we don't have any kind of issues here. And I guess we'll attach onto here so that we have more options. We do also have the Kangaskhan, I suppose. Not that we have any energy to attach at this point, but we get another knockout, going down to one prize card remaining, and I think this is the point where we want to get a big, massive attack with our Delphox. I say massive, it's not going to be that huge, but it does take account for my opponent's energies as well, so let's go and see how much damage we can deal here. We do have to lose 2 energies off our Lugia, but Delphox's second attack, 20 for all of the energy in play, so we're dealing a big 260 damage. That is enough to knock out a tag team Pokemon, so nice to finish off the game with a big attack. And we do get 1 single Pokecoin for playing in the trainer challenge, so they definitely don't encourage you to play this mode, but it is fun to try out these old theme decks. So let me know if you've tried out this one and how your experiences have gone with it, if you've enjoyed it, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next video.